Hey, it's Max from UNFTR reporting for the MeidasTouch network. You can find me on YouTube and Blue Sky at UNFTR. Now, I want to address the recent meeting in Beijing where world leaders held hands, literally, in a kumbaya gathering that shows that Donald Trump is really deserving of the Peace Prize because nobody brings together people quite like the Donald.
For the past 2 days, President Xi Jinping hosted, as you can see, their world leaders at the Shanghai Cooperation Organisation Summit, including Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Their growing strategic partnership was clear from the get-go, with all three leaders huddled close together, smiling and laughing. There was also a shot of the Indian Prime Minister and Russian President sharing a car ride together.
This past weekend, we witnessed something remarkable when leaders from across Asia gathered as part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And according to Reuters, this was explicitly framed as a show of global South solidarity. Now, the SCO isn't a typical alliance. It's not like NATO with its binding mutual defense clauses and integrated military command structure, and it's not like the G7 either, with its focus on economic coordination among wealthy Western democracies. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization is more of an informal alliance that represents deepening ties between countries that collectively make up more than half of the world's population. So we're talking about China, Russia, India, Pakistan, Iran, and multiple Central Asian states all coming together with shared goals of regional stability, security collaboration, economic integration, and most importantly, diplomatic cooperation that explicitly positions itself as an alternative to Western-led international frameworks. So let's talk about it. What made this particular meeting so significant is that it was the first time in 7 years that India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, attended the meeting in person. 7 years. And the press coverage for the event, the organizers, everyone involved made absolutely certain to put the increasing allegiance between China and India on full display. And of course, there were others that were invited to the party too. We even got photos of Putin literally walking hand in hand with Modi, imagery that was clearly designed to send a message. The symbolism here can't be overstated. These are the countries that represent some of the world's largest populations and economies, also their nuclear powers, all gathering together while the United States becomes increasingly isolated through its own erratic and contradictory foreign policy decisions. Make no mistake, this purposefully public display of mutual admiration was directed squarely at the United States. And it puts us in the strangest possible position when you really think about it. The Trump administration came into office literally cozying up to Putin again. We watched Trump lambaste Zelensky in the Oval Office, essentially throwing Ukraine under the bus while maintaining this bizarre personal relationship with the Russian dictator. And Trump has widely praised Modi, calling him a close ally and celebrating his strongman persona as he leads the world's most populous nation. But then, and this is where it gets really insane, Trump has completely reversed course. Now we have sanctions on Russia, even while Trump maintains this image of personal friendship with Putin. And just recently, we slapped 50% tariffs on India, which came as a complete shock to everyone, including India, because India refused to stop buying oil from Russia, who Donald Trump sanctions, but also then personally supports and happens to like the dictator. I mean, none of it makes any sense, right? None of it makes any sense whatsoever. And it all leads back to the fundamental question. Why is Trump picking fights with these nations? Together, Russia, India, and China represent the RIC in the BRICS alliance. That's why. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and now expanded to include Indonesia. And here's what's fascinating. They all have Trump tariffs in common, but for completely different reasons that the administration has tried to justify. So let's check in with CNBC to talk about Trump's economic agenda. I mean, presumably they've brought on an erudite and formidable economic mind to help unpack this all.
I think we can be honest about saying it would have been way worse if Kamala Harris were president. And we can also say, I wish that the policy on some of these matters were better.
Oh, for the love of God. Really, CNBC? Really?
Listen, I think the Democrats are responsible for everything bad that happens with geopolitics, trade imbalances, and tariff wars because wokeness and culture issues.
Anyway, let me break down just how contradictory and irrational our approach has become. We have a trade surplus with Brazil, but we're putting 50% tariffs on them because their former President Bolsonaro is being prosecuted for trying to overthrow their last election? Think about that. We're economically punishing a country because they're holding their own insurrectionists accountable. That's not it. Now, we have sanctions on Russia, even though Trump has clearly sided with Putin in Russia's aggression against Ukraine and has repeatedly embarrassed himself and our country by caving to Putin in every face-to-face meeting that they've had. So that's not it either. We're putting 50% tariffs on India after declaring them one of our closest allies in the world and praising Modi's leadership style. Also, not the reason. South Africa? We've even subjected South African goods to a 30% tariff as of August, but our trade deficit with them is around $7 billion. That's it. It's basically nothing and represents goods that are either impractical or impossible for us to produce domestically. So that can't be it. And then, well, there's the great white whale, China.
China. I love them. China. 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 I have to have my China. China. China because China. 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 China.
China is our largest trading partner, providing consumer goods, most of which we have no interest in manufacturing domestically, let's be honest, making these tariffs entirely inflationary and harmful to American consumers. So that's not it either. So what is this all about? Well, there is a pattern here. The pattern is that there's no pattern. There's no coherent strategy, no long-term thinking, just reactive emotional decision-making that's pushing some of the world's most important economies directly into each other's arms. So from where I sit, here's the only logical conclusion that I can find, as though there's anything logical about this administration. The BRICS nations have made no secret of the fact that they view the Trump administration as increasingly irrational, volatile, and hostile. And they've openly stated that for the security and safety of the global economy moving forward, that these large and maturing economies will have to step in to fill the leadership gap that America is creating through its own incompetence. And they're not just talking about it. They're actively building the infrastructure to make it happen. They're developing plans for backup reserve currencies, potentially through stablecoins tied to a basket of their currencies and hard commodities that can be used to settle international trades, moving away from the dollar-based SWIFT system that has been the backbone of American economic influence for decades. They're reorienting supply chains to drive new trade relationships that explicitly exclude the United States. In other words, they're building toward a future that no longer places the United States at the center of the global economy. When Modi met with Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the SCO summit, they explicitly framed their relationship as a partnership, not a rivalry. Modi said they were, quote, committed to progressing relations based on mutual respect, trust, and sensitivities, end quote. President Xi responded by saying that China and India are, quote, each other's development opportunities rather than threats, end quote. And apparently, Modi has blown off multiple attempts by the Trump administration to dialogue in the past couple of weeks. I mean, this is unprecedented, and it's really embarrassing. But think about the significance of the language that they're using. These are two nuclear powers with the disputed borders. They had a military clash in 2020. They've been militarizing the Himalayan border for years. India hosts the Dalai Lama, who Beijing considers a dangerous separatist. They have a massive trade imbalance, with India running a $99 billion deficit to China. But Trump's policies have been so destabilizing, so erratic, that these two nations with fundamental disagreements are willing to put their differences aside and build economic and strategic partnerships that exclude American influence. They're resuming direct flights between their countries for the first time since 2020. China's lifting export restrictions on rare earths and fertilizers and tunnel boring machines to India. They're allowing Indian pilgrims to visit religious sites in Tibet. All of this is happening while they're both dealing with punitive American tariffs, and probably because of it. But here's where the story takes an even more dramatic turn. The Trump administration now faces a potentially catastrophic legal problem with its reliance on tariffs as basically our only policy tool. A federal appellate court judge just upheld a lower trade court ruling that Trump's tariffs are illegal because the Constitution explicitly places taxation and tariff power in the hands of Congress, not the executive branch. The only exceptions the president has are for emergency powers, and those are limited to 45 days. So if this gets taken to the Supreme Court and it's very likely that it will, there's a strong chance that they'll agree with the lower courts because this constitutional power is so specifically enumerated. It's not ambiguous constitutional language that is open to interpretation. Article 1, Section 8 is pretty clear about who has the power to regulate commerce and impose taxes. So let's think about what this means. Trump has started a global trade war, alienated our allies, built his entire revenue agenda around collecting tariffs using powers he doesn't actually have under the Constitution. If the Supreme Court breaks with Trump, as they have done in certain instances, and strikes down his tariff authority, Trump will be left with zero economic policy whatsoever right as we're facing a global economic slowdown and having destroyed our relationships with all of our major trading partners. So here's what we need to understand about the broader economic picture here. The global economy is slowing down quickly. Growth is decelerated here in the United States, all throughout Europe, in Canada, across Latin America, and throughout Asia as well. Some of this is natural. Pandemic-era monetary policy created some oversupply of currency, for example, but economic cycles naturally have ups and downs. So all of this is coming due, and it's coming to a head. But most of this showdown has been accelerated by Trump's recklessness. But here's the key difference that we really need to understand. China plans in long-term cycles. We plan by quarterly earnings releases. China is willing to take short-term economic pain to prop up their markets and financial systems and to build toward a longer strategic game. They think in decades, not quarterly earnings. And we don't plan like that anymore. We have no coherent foreign policy whatsoever. We have no industrial policy, no trade policy. We have no vision for America's role in the world other than to browbeat everyone into buying our treasury bonds to keep us flush with cash while we rack up unsustainable debt. Trump's only plan to address the money that we're hemorrhaging is to tax our own importing companies through tariffs and systematically destroy our relationships with the world. And now there's a very real possibility that even his one big economic idea will be struck down by the courts as unconstitutional. This would leave us with literally zero policy. Like maybe a bad policy is better than none. I don't know. A global depression that we helped accelerate taking hold with zero plan, a world that's increasingly pissed off at us and actively building systems designed to exclude American influence? What could go wrong? So as we watch China and India shake hands in Beijing, as we see Putin literally walking hand in hand with Modi, as we witness the BRICS nations building alternative financial systems, we have to ask ourselves, is this really the America First policy that we were promised? For the MeidasTouch Network, I'm Max from UNFTR. Make sure to visit our website at UNFTR.com to sign up for our free weekly newsletter. And thanks as always to the Meidas Mighty for tuning in. Heads down, elbows up. I'll see you in the next video.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.